rather than wasted. Time isn't precious at all because it is an illusion. What you perceive as precious is not time, but the one point that is out of time, the now. That is precious indeed. The more you are focused on time, past and future, the more you miss the now, the most precious thing there is.
Yo, before we get into this episode, I do want to talk to you guys about the new Life's a Gamble tees. Side seamed, 100% cotton, premium fit, premium feel. Here's the back. So if you like these tees or the rest of the stuff that I have, go to www.visionstriveachieve.com. Every purchase supports the movement, helps the movement grow. So if you get anything from this episode and you want to see me continue to make these, the support means everything. So head to www.visionstriveachieve.com, pick something up, and yeah, thank you. Let's get into the episode.
My name's Kevin Mcculloch. I was born in Fairfax, Virginia. So my craft is facilitating experiences for individuals and organizations to help them find clarity, discovery, connection, growth, healing, and transformation. I've been able to develop and deliver this craft as a psychotherapist, as an entrepreneur with Floatstl, as an event producer, as an executive coach, as a mental performance coach with the St. Louis Cardinals, and also as a spiritual guide. I grew up in Fairfax, Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C. My dad was in the Secret Service. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, but she was trained as a nurse. I had an older brother and a younger brother. I just remember really enjoying Fairfax. It was an international community, so I had friends from all over the globe, all types of different cultures. And I remember my dad traveling quite a bit. So every campaign year he'd be gone, traveling around to different events, supporting the presidential campaigns. And he'd always bring stuff back from these faraway places. And I just remember that really piquing my interest and curiosity for global travel, for different cultures. And I think that's what led me throughout my adolescence and early adult years to pursue an interest in international business and traveling. So ultimately, that led me to moving abroad. And in 2005, when I was 26, I moved to the Czech Republic to live in Prague with a couple of my friends. Working over there, living over there for a couple of years, I came across this opportunity to do some work in Baku, Azerbaijan. There I had developed an aviation English course and was teaching it to air traffic controllers. But while I was in Baku, Azerbaijan, I suffered an intracerebral hemorrhage. So basically a blood vessel ruptured and began to slowly leak blood in my brain. And I was paralyzed down my right side. I lost some of my peripheral vision. After receiving some medical attention, I remember laying in my bed wondering if I was going to die in the next moment or not, and not having a lot of answers. And that went on for the next 7 days. Eventually, I was able to make it back to Prague, and I made it back to St. Louis. And at that time, I had brain surgery. And the brain surgery required a 9-month recovery period. So in this very short period of time, maybe about 4 weeks, I went from being 28 years old in 2007, living in Prague, flying back and forth to Baku, being a very independent, kind of globe-trotting 28-year-old. And within a matter of weeks, all of that life was gone. And instead I was bedridden, I was living in my childhood bedroom. My mom was coming upstairs, feeding me soup in bed. And I just remember laying there waiting, waiting for the day that I could go walk again. I didn't know what to expect, what was ahead of me. I just knew everything was gone. And I remember when I was laying in that bed in Baku, I really didn't know if I was going to die or not. I remember looking around the room. All I had there was luggage. I was by myself. I wasn't there with any friends. I wasn't there with any family. The people who were attending to me mostly spoke Russian. They spoke Azerbaijan, very little English. So I couldn't even really communicate. And I just remember thinking, okay, I guess this might be the end. And I think at that time I didn't really feel satisfied with that being the final chapter of my life. The way that I had lived, the way that I had contributed, the things I had created up until that point didn't feel very satisfying. And so I didn't know it at the time, but that would ultimately be the catalyst for seeing things a different way. After I finished my surgery and went through the recovery period, I really had to start over. And at the time I was scheduled to go into the MBA program at Washington University. And I remember after waiting an extra year for this medical deferment, working through part-time jobs at Starbucks and California Pizza Kitchen, finally getting back to the point where I could go back to this grad program at Washington University that I had been waiting to do for about 3 years. I went for a couple weeks and I dropped out because the dream that I had had before was kind of connected to a different person. It wasn't really important to me anymore. And so a little while after that, I felt kind of lost. I didn't know what to do. I remember my parents asked me, well, they thought I was crazy. I think they thought I really had brain damage. They said, if you're not going to do this program, what are you going to do? And I said, I don't know, but not this. I went with a friend out to do a medicine journey in southern Colorado at this horse sanctuary, the base of the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. And during that, I received a message that I was here to be in service to others and give and receive love. And I took that message, and after receiving that, that's when I decided to go back to school to become a mental health counselor. And going through my life, there's always doubt. There's always fear. And what I've learned is, for me, it's better to work towards cultivating a relationship with that doubt and that fear rather than trying to overcome it. There's parts of me that have doubt, there's parts of me that have fear. And I try just to honor that those qualities are part of my experience. And they're part of me, and that's part of what makes me whole. And I try not to get into a binary on-off win-lose battle with fear and doubt. Whenever I'm moving into something that has risk, there's unknown, there's uncertainty, and I think the relationship with doubt and fear can help me. So it's never anything I want to completely extinguish. I'd rather kind of keep it here close and have that open line of communication so I can understand its perspective, I can understand where it's coming from, I can understand what it sees, but I don't have to allow that to be kind of my narrow point of focus. It's one perspective, one input. There's value to it. I don't have to completely disregard it. And I feel like for me that allows me to then not be in positions where that disregarded doubt might sometimes come up over the top and win if I'm always kind of keeping it here. So doubt is kind of, kind of keeps me honest. maybe keeps me present, keeps me cautious, keeps me attentive. But yeah, it's always there. There's a few different things that motivate me to keep going. One, I think, was born in the idea of living with intention and living with purpose to the best of my ability on a daily basis. Coming out of that near-death experience, not knowing if in that moment that was the final moment, that was the last chapter of the book. I knew the next time that I encountered that, I wanted to feel settled and certain of being comfortable with that, accepting of that, not feeling like I left anything on the table. So that drives me on a daily basis. And I think what also feeds that is aligning that drive with action connected to my values. So if I'm acting within my values on a daily basis, and that's kind of informing my purpose, that action I know can go out into the world and do good. And in my experience, the outcomes of that action that I end up being aware of tend to be only a fraction of everything that's taking place. So if I just take here at the Float Center, for example, the Float Center here has provided me with great benefit, with me with great joy. It's done that also for our team here, our employees, the community that we've been able to build. That impacts them. It impacts them in ways that I know, it impacts them in ways that I don't know. The same goes for the guests that come here and have experiences. There's ways that I'll never know that how this space has impacted those people. So there's this unknowingness to the impact that drives me because it can't easily be quantified. So there's no end to it. It's limitless. So the possibility is limitless, the output is limitless, and I find motivation in that to just keep showing up, keep applying, keep engaging in effort with purpose and intention, and just believing that that's radiating outward and having an impact in so many ways that are beyond my comprehension. I think that really excites me. Growing up, we moved around a lot, and I remember arriving in new environments where I had no relationships, and how important it was to create safety, create connections. And that was almost more important than knowing myself, being myself. The security of those relationships was more important than my self-expression. And I think through that, I developed a process of getting good at creating those relationships. And I developed a process of getting good at hiding myself. But what I learned over time was that, the relationship with myself is the foundation of all my relationships outward. And it's only through the relationship with myself and knowing myself that I'm able to be in relationship with others. I think if I had to give some advice to my younger self, it would be to, listen for your truth, know your truth, respect your truth, and in knowing that truth and respecting that truth, you can be that truth, allow that to be your expression, and trust that through that expression you're going to find yourself with those connections and with those relationships. And then those relationships are going to be with people and places and things that are speaking to your true nature, not ending up finding yourself in relationships with things that you thought you need, from a place where you thought you needed to be, which ultimately could lead you to feel empty and alone. So I think growth comes from when we move to extend ourselves in the direction of an area where we have ignorance, where we have uncertainty, where we have unfamiliarity, where we have discomfort. And we allow ourselves to come into contact with those limits. I think that's when growing is happening. I think oftentimes that can be an unpleasant process. It can be frustrating. It can be transparent. It can be humbling. And sometimes encountering those unpleasant, uncomfortable experiences leads us to retract from growth opportunities or avoid them altogether or convince ourselves that we don't really want that, we don't really need that. So I think as we just kind of allow ourselves to be honest with our tendencies, with our avoidance strategies, with the ways in which we move away from discomfort, it can then help us lean into more growth opportunities. If we know the way that we usually flow, if we understand our normal rhythm and how we typically operate, I think we can get into better processes of choice around choosing growth rather than the avoidance of growth kind of navigating us. Something I'd like to continue to work towards with the understanding that I'll never attain it. Something to strive towards. And it really just comes down to more presence, more moments. I heard somewhere that there's an infinite amount of moments in every unit of time. So in an hour there's an infinite amount of moments. In a minute there's an infinite amount of moments. In a second there's an infinite amount of moments. And so part of what drives my life and my behavior is like, how can I be present for more of those moments? And knowing that there's never going to be an end point, I'm never going to get to the end of that. But in the presence, like in presence there's connection. In presence there's beauty. In presence there's love. In presence there's peace. In presence there's joy. Laughter is in presence. All of those things happen in presence. And so I just want to continue to work towards more moments of presence.